To all the students, to all our community members, welcome to this Hebrew and Arabic calligraphy workshop, which will be moderated by Carol Bier. Carol is an art historian and a long-time research scholar here at the Center for Islamic Studies at the GTU, and has helped us bring many beautiful programs and coordinate with many creative artists here in the Bay Area. So welcome, Carol, and Carol will be moderating our event today.
Thank you. It's so exciting to be here in person. Welcome to today's calligraphy workshop that concerns Hebrew and Arabic writing. I'm Carol Bier, research scholar here at the GTU with the Center for Islamic Studies, and my field of study is the history of Islamic art. Although I've worked with Arabic scripts and inscriptions, this evening I'm here as moderator. Before introducing our workshop and its leaders and presenters, I'd like to begin by sharing a personal story. I had two grandmothers. One was an Orthodox Jew, and the other a devout Presbyterian. As a child, I thought that one of them read their prayer book backwards, and I wondered why. Now that reminds me of a Nasreddin Hoxha story. When asked why he was riding the donkey backwards, his reply was, "How do you know which way I'm going?" It was when I was a graduate student studying Arabic that I realized how mistaken I was to consider that Bubby was reading her book backwards. But we often take for granted such considerations and misconceptions. Jews and Muslims, Israelis and Arabs, just those broad terms. There is so much confusion of ethnicities, languages, and religious beliefs, to say nothing of politics. Just think for a moment, Jews and Arabs are both Semitic, but not all Muslims are Arabs, and not all Arabs are Muslims. That's broader issues for another discussion. But in the news, there is far too much focus on differences than on similarities. And one of the beauties of the Madrasa-Midrasha program is the consideration of consonants. Without the intentionality of a pun this evening, we'll focus on consonants. For that is one of the similarities of Arabic and Hebrew, both Semitic languages, written from right to left, with words constructed from triliteral roots, that is, having three consonants. Tonight's workshop will focus on language and writing, and in particular, the diverse scripts of Hebrew and Arabic. Let me say no more, but introduce our two presenters. Peretz to my left, Peretz Wolf-Prusan, is among his many interests and talents an educator, a printmaker, and a creator of ketubot, illuminated wedding documents. He lived in Israel, where he studied at the Hebrew Union College. From 1990 to 2010, he served at the Congregation Emmanuel in San Francisco as rabbi and senior educator. He received the Covenant Award, naming him, quote, an exceptional Jewish educator who has had a significant impact on others in recognition of his outstanding contributions to the transmission of Jewish knowledge, values, and identity. Arash Shirinbab, also to my left, is an artist and a calligrapher here in the Bay Area who has participated in more than 40 exhibitions in his native homeland of Iran, as well as in the United States, Canada, and Europe, Spain, France, Italy, and Poland. He's co-founder and director of the Zia Art Center here in Berkeley, and he's a member of the National Arabic Script Calligraphers in America. He's conducted numerous calligraphy workshops and collaborative projects in the United States. Please welcome our two presenters this evening. I'd like to ask each of you a leading question to get us started. Tell us, tell us about your relationship with Hebrew or Arabic and its writing. And I welcome you to offer a demonstration if you'd like. First Peretz, and then Arash.
Should we talk first and then have people come up?
Yeah.
Yeah. So this is going to be a very moving experience because we're going to move you. You can put that in the evaluation. I was moved. So we'll talk a little, and then because you have to see, like, can everyone see what I'm? No, you can't see anything. So in a moment, we'll just bring you closer. Is that okay? Right. So why don't you start?
Yeah, I guess Carol.
Oh, what do you want to do? Well, who talks first?
You talk first.
Oh, well, there's that. Okay, hello. So I'm happy to say that I am now also a resident of Berkeley. My wife and I moved back in 2019. I say back because we met in Berkeley, and I said to her, we'll be right back. All right, some 4 years later, we're back. So I'm very happy to be here. I am, first and foremost, the grandson of a refugee from Lithuania who was a sign painter. That was my grandfather. So he came to this country, not speaking any English, but because he could paint, he could do Roman letters, both Lithuanian, Hungarian, all kinds of things. He could do whatever he needed to do. He instantly had work in New York City. My father grew up in the shop, and you have to imagine a sign shop has corners. So my grandfather was in that corner, and my father picked that corner where they had the guy doing neon. So he did neon work. When I grew up, I went to that corner, which is the guy doing screen printing for signs. So basically, that was the shop I grew up in. So letters have been in my life all my life. I still can't see a flickering neon sign without getting anxious that should be fixed, or a slightly crooked letter in a sign. However, I came into Hebrew lettering primarily through my grandfather, just trying to teach me something, not as a career, because who does that? But after a series of different moves in my life, around the 1970, about 1974, I embarked on this occupation, not a living, of doing Hebrew illuminated manuscripts for a wedding, also known as a ketubah. And the word, I'm trying to avoid the word contract, because they're not contracts, but they're Hebrew illuminated manuscripts. I had never seen any in this country, not till I went to Israel in '73, went to the Hebrew University Museum and the Hebrew National Museum, and said, oh my goodness gracious, we have an art tradition. No one ever taught me that. So I saw ketubot from Italy, all over Italy, Iberia, all over the world, and I came back to Berkeley, basically, Bay Area, and I embarked doing that for about a decade, doing this illumination of wedding documents. It was a great way to make a poor living. Guaranteed poverty, but it was fun. It was fun in those days, and working as a teacher on the side. And then I abandoned that to go back to finish art school, finish then graduate school, and then had a many-year stint as a rabbi, as mentioned, and now retired, I have returned to lettering with a passion. Well, I still can, and I'm very happy to be invited back. Be invited anywhere. Been in my shed for 3 years, but to share some things I know about Hebrew lettering. How's that?
Before you demonstrate, let's hear from Arash, his relationship, because then I have a pertinent question to begin the demonstration.
Yes. All right. Okay, that was really interesting. Thanks for sharing that. So For me, getting familiar or being introduced to Arabic or Persian calligraphy, I'm from Iran, so we write Farsi and we speak Persian or Farsi. So it's as Carol was mentioning, it's a different, completely different set of language from Arabic, but we use the same script or letter system. So we use Arabic writing system, but our language is completely different. So when I went to school, in schools, even from first, second grade, they start teaching calligraphy, and when you start growing into upper levels, you start using really traditional tools with ink. So and it's part of usually art classes in schools. So when I was a kid, I would dabble and mess around, and because working with traditional tool and following the traditional pathway is very kind of hard, and it needs a lot of patience. I threw it away. I really didn't like it. I hated it when I was a kid. But then I always loved art, so I went to a lot of art classes. I had art teachers, did painting, drawing, and a lot of different art theory classes beside my school. And then, interestingly enough, it came back to me, the calligraphy, about 15 years ago. So my wife was actually a calligrapher, so she did calligraphy. She had kind of some of the certificates from the Iranian National Society of Calligraphers, which is one of the 2 schools of calligraphy in the world that are teaching calligraphy in an official way, and they have very certain apprenticeship program, and they give certificates. So she was doing calligraphy, and she would go to her classes, and at some point, her teacher told her that your first in Iran there's this traditional calligraphy pathway that you have to do just one style until you get to some certain mastery, and then you can start another style. So her master was recommending her to start a new style, and then as soon as she started that new style and brought her practices home, I fell in love with that one. That one is a less known or less practiced style in Iran. So maybe when we go into the demo, I'll show you which one is it. So I started that one, and immediately I kind of fell in love with it and continued kind of practicing. But 2 years after that, we immigrated to United States. So I couldn't work with my master anymore. And then I saw that nobody does calligraphy, Arabic or Persian calligraphy here. So I was very, kind of student myself and novice, but I thought, I should start, kind of teaching whatever I know or promoting it. So at the beginning, my wife and I would go to different events and put together like a table, start writing names for people in Arabic and Farsi, and show our artwork, and kind of gradually this became the art center that Carol was mentioning, kind of trying to make it more official into a nonprofit organization that kind of promotes Arabic and Persian calligraphy. But long story short, I keep practicing, and I'm still a student. Calligraphy is a lifelong journey, and then because I have the art background, I kind of combine calligraphy and painting, and I can show you some of the works here, but I don't want to talk too much for one question.
So the question I want to ask each of you is, what's the first letter of the alphabet? Peretz in Hebrew.
I didn't know there would be a quiz. All right. Okay, I'm sorry, but you were taught calligraphy as a child?
Yeah, I was part of school, so.
We really messed up. No, I spent many years at Camp Swig and now Camp Newman, which is a camp for Jewish kids, teaching Hebrew lettering. And the aesthetic history of Hebrew writing was completely abandoned with the destruction of communities in Europe and disruption of communities in North Africa. It had prospered a lot in Israel in terms of modern lettering, but America, nada, zero, zilch. And I'm glad that the wisdom of Persia persisted, but I'm going to bring that back. Yeah, that's just a big thing. It's just a huge thing to be denied your cultural history in favor of modernism. So I'm just recovering from that for a moment. All right, so do you want to do a little demonstration of the Aleph? Is that where we're going here?
Yeah.
Okay, so, oh, hello.
Peretz,
No.
you mentioned that Aleph is the first letter. I just want to reinforce this similarity, in this case not of consonants but of consonants. What is the first letter of Arabic?
Yeah, it's the same Aleph.
Aleph.
So
Okay.
the word letter is really interesting, and you said the word consonant. Who here plays a musical instrument? What do you play?
Piano and blah, blah, blah.
So let's say it's a piano piece that you know well. What do you ever play a piece that you know well and have the music in front of you?
Yeah.
Why?
Why?
Yeah, if you know it well, what's the...
Knowing it well doesn't mean memorizing.
So you can think of the early Semitic languages usually were song cycles and poetry. The oldest parts of the Hebrew Torah are the poems, the 15 long poems spread throughout. And so to preserve their sounding, you only have to write the consonant notes. So the early letters are really music notes. And only after, in the 5th century, do scribes in Tiberias, hearing that people are losing how to pronounce the letters or the words, start putting vowels in. My students always claimed that it was cruel that we took the vowels out. And I had to learn and explain that the vowels were put in as the language was changing. But you can also think of letters as recognizable sounds that you know how to sing, but you use them to stay true to the song. Does that make sense? So it's more of it's an art performance more than a literary comes later, poetry comes first in so many ways. But also, now I'm going to keep moving this towards you. Okay, so I'm going to use a pencil here. So, a common language between us is, when I say between us in Semitic language, is Phoenician, the Sea Peoples, those pesky Phoenicians, and the word in Phoenician for ox, just in case you need it one day, is Alp. 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 So, if you were going to draw that efficiently, okay, you can't see what I'm doing.
No, it's okay, I can see it. It's round.
I'm drawing a circle.
Yeah, circle.
Right. If you're going to draw that, what makes an ox different than a rabbit are the horns. And if you want to then make it even more efficient, you emphasize the horns and a little bit of the head, and eventually you have an aleph. And eventually you have an A. Now you got to step in here with the aleph in Arabic.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, I don't have that much of an interesting story. That was really awesome.
How do you draw that? How do you draw it?
Yeah, for Aleph, for Farsi and Arabic is very simple. Line from top to bottom, and then it's just that. Excuse me. But then if you want to do it in calligraphy, so it becomes a little bit more beautiful. So, so the style that I was talking about, you go from top to left, but with a little bit of curve. Then gradually make a very sharp line in the bottom. And then there's like this head on top. It goes like here.
And then house. House? condo. Condo conversion. So beta, or bayit, so I can go almost every Hebrew letter that way. That the Aleph, Bet, Gimel, Gimel, that's an easy one. Gamal, which is drawn. Because what's distinguished about a camel is this long foot. In other words, so almost every single letter comes from an early, more Phoenician pictogram. Aleph for Alp, Beta for Bet, Gimel for Gamal, Nun, Nachash, snake, because that's what it looks like. Well, basically, it looks like a. I was just in Marrakesh. I like saying that. I'm going to milk that for the next 40 years of my life. I was just in Marrakesh, and they literally had in this big square, people was like bringing up snakes out of a basket. I thought that was only in the movies. That was quite exciting as I ran away. So Aleph, Bet, Gimel, Nachash, Mayim, Mem.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Mem is, well, first of all, the letter Mem is first and foremost a wave from Mayim, water. Pei, this is easy.
Is that your question?
Where'd my paper go? Pei is, pe means face or mouth. So it looks like what it means. So this early influence of the Phoenician pictograms go into early Hebrew. Hebrew then, wait a second, I'm going to stop. That answers your question? I went too far.
Indeed it does.
Okay.
I have a question before Arash comes back.
Stop.
Are letters formed within squares?
This one from the other side.
Please have fun.
Are letters formed within squares?
Okay, that brings us up. So Hebrew then migrates, in 586 BC, Hebrew migrates to Babylonia. And it changes, and it becomes a square script, actually called an Aramaic square script. And it comes back 70 years later, and it replaces the earlier alphabet. And Hebrew is now forevermore in a square script form. Does that make sense? So even Arabic, Mosul Arabic, is written by Jews in Hebrew letters. Ladino, which is Spanish, is written in Hebrew letters. Yiddish, which is part German, is written in Hebrew letters. So that square script that comes back from Babylonia becomes what we now call the Hebrew alphabet. But actually it's an Aramaic alphabet.
Well,
Was that clear? Was that clear enough?
Before we cover up the Aleph in Arabic, can you show how that becomes a marker measure within a circle?
Yeah. So there's a calligraphy. I guess in many lettering system, when you want to write beautifully, when you're doing your handwriting, measurement and proportions doesn't really matter. But when you do calligraphy, that always matters. The proportion between each letter to another letter, and also the letter to itself. So in Arabic and Farsi, first of all, we connect letters to make word usually. So each letter ends up having 3 to 4, or most of them, 3 to 4 different forms. So one is a standalone like this, the other one is the initial, then in the middle, and then in the last. So, and sometimes they're very different in terms of how you write them. So one of the systems for measuring how long things are going to be, what is the length of the stroke that I'm doing, whether it's horizontal or vertical, is by either putting them in a circle or using the dots of the same pen. So if you have this aleph and then you have a circle around it, And then the other letter, the next letter, which is ba, goes inside this. So it becomes like this. And then this letter, with dots, with different dots, it becomes a different letter. So for example, if you have one dot in the bottom, it's ba. But if you have two dots at the top, it becomes te, which is t. If you have three dots on the top, it becomes the, which is like th. If you have three dots in the bottom, it becomes pa or pe, which is p, which is only in Farsi, it's not in Arabic. So one form can become four different letters. And then the next one is, let me do the dots and then I'll write the other one. And then with the dots that we do, we measure the amount of dots that we write to understand how long one stroke can go, whether vertically or horizontally. So for example, Aleph can go from 4 dots to 7 dots on a regular script when you're writing on a paper. Sometimes when you look at monuments like architecture, you might break those rules and have an Aleph that is going from top of the building to the bottom. But on a regular base, this is the system. So you start from top, and then you start putting your dots. And dot is the kind of... yeah, exactly. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So mine is too long on a if you want to do a traditional stroke. And you can go on with the same circle and with the same dots. You start measuring the other parts. Like for example, this is 2 dots, and then this stroke should be 7 to 9 dots, and so on. So at the beginning, when we start practicing and learning calligraphy, we do measure everything. But then gradually the eye and I guess the muscle becomes that, gains that mastery that this is where I have to stop and you don't go anymore. So.
Is there, yeah, Peretz.
So this move that you just made here, right? You push the pen?
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't understand that at all. Because this motion this way, right? My entire body is screaming. Because Hebrew, I just learned this. Because I took this class for just a day. But Hebrew is a downstroke language from the top. So from up here, you stroke down. The idea of actually pushing back into the pen, into there, is it's heresy actually. No, it's for me. My entire hand's going no, not that direction, because it wants to do this. It wants to flow from the top. Well, that was horrible, but down. So what I'm also asking is that in Hebrew, the basic letter for the font design is the yud. However the yud is done, then the entire alphabet that you're doing flows out of a yud. Because a yud is just a long resh, or a vav, or a resh is also a hey. Like that. So that's how you, and also then you're right. I mean, it's in a square right now. Now you can, of course, have fun and make a big lamed. But it's still within its own square down here. But all the strokes are, are you going to ask why there's right to left?
Sure. There is a question.
This is totally new. I knew about the square. Well, I'm Jewish, so I know Hebrew more than I know Arabic at all. So I knew it was square based. I didn't know Arabic was circular based, but this totally makes sense.
And that was just the contrast that I wanted to bring out. It's not always the case in Arabic, but for the bulk of these cursive styles, the circle and the measure of aleph as the diameter is the metric starting point.
Wow.
And for Hebrew,
Wow.
it's the yud, top line down.
Mm-hmm.
So if you ever happen to see like a Torah scroll in with an awl, AWL, not a pencil but a sharp tool, lines are drawn, and then the scribe works top down, top down, top down. But it's basically still the yud is a square. It's a smaller square. It's a square, and then it's scaled out from the yud to become other letters.
But there's also right, left, and left, right. In both
So-
systems.
One theory, pretty good one, is that many of these alphabets were originally carved into clear wax, and in predominant right hand, you can't, if you try to carve left to right, you'll knock your head in, which is a short lifespan for a scribe. And so they never bred, they died out. So, just not marriageable. Another dead scribe. But left to right, if you do sculpture, you can see where you're going and you can put the hammer behind you. The alphabets that emerge later with ink go left to right. So we're stuck with
Alphabets, but not
Alphabets.
Hebrew and not
Hebrew.
Arabic.
Right. All the right to left out letters were originally like carved, like cuneiform, things like that. Later alphabets, like Greek and Roman, are penned and left to right.
Well, the Greeks first were strephodon going both ways.
Both ways, right. They went both ways like that. There's manuscripts that go down and up. It's really quite remarkable. But also, if you think about Japanese and Chinese, actually Chinese letters, you start often top and then towards your body, down, which works well for a big horsehair brush. So tools really have an influence.
Exactly the next question. You had mentioned tool earlier, and I wanted to raise that as the next question. Can you each talk about the traditional tools in your craft and its practice?
Yeah, sure. I can go with that. I have some tools here, so I can share them with you. So the main traditional tool is this one. Oh my God, there's so many of them. Is this one. So this is reed, and the reed pen is the main tool that we use. So sometimes people use also bamboo, but the main one that we use is reed, and they usually dry it out with a very specific kind of method. Sometimes it takes a year to completely dry it out and prepare it for calligraphy. And this is really the original one that you buy from stores. But then, excuse me. But then you have to start using your pen knife, and there's a flat slab, usually with wood or with bone, that you have to put it and trim it. So we usually do an angle. It can starts from 15 degree to 45 degree, depending on the width of the pen or the style that you're writing. It really it differs from the English calligraphy writing, which is usually completely straightforward. And there's a complete standard, I guess, for the nibs that we use in English calligraphy, but there's not much standard here. So everything goes with whatever the heart of calligrapher or the eye is trained to do. So you don't measure them by like centimeters or millimeters. It's more about, kind of, I feel this is good and this trim is right for me, and you start writing. And it's interesting because reed usually has a lot of resistance on regular paper, so I can't really write with this on this paper. That's why the one that I used, I have a cloth on it, so it absorbs enough ink and it has less resistance. As Peretz was mentioning, we have a lot of push strokes. So we usually use glossy or semi-glossy paper to go with this. And you said my body, screams. Master calligraphers, when they write their big strokes, always really start screaming, and that's the sound you it's kind of a standard that you understand this is a master writing. It sounds very kind of nice.
I've heard it called God's laughter.
Yeah, it's like a very interesting sound. But then, if I want to scale up, I use bigger reed pens or even piece of wood, even, kind of house tools, with the cloth on it. So I can put them here if you want to look at them and pass them around.
Arash, I was just thinking about Vishnu's name.
Yeah, here from the, exactly.
Peretz, do you want to add to that?
Oh, just because, so I couldn't find this week in my shed. I have a goose quill pen, but I couldn't find it. But I will demonstrate one little thing. So going big and large, like these guys, or these, this is non-traditional, to say the least. More traditional would be, now this is non-traditional because I couldn't find a quill pen. This is still pretty large, but a sofer or Hebrew scribe is generally working on something small. So it would be a stroke, and again, I don't know if anyone can...
Yeah, feel free to move in if you... Yeah, feel free to move in if you need to...
Yeah, can everyone see what I'm doing? Right. So a quill like this, or this is a modern version, or it could be a dip, like a Speedball C0, C1, the C series. The move is small. I mean, this is actually very large for a mezuzah or a Sefer Torah or something like that, but if it was something that was going to home, it would be about that size. And so if you can see all the strokes, recently it's just having more and more fun with color. I don't have any lines drawn here, so I'm kind of free-forming it. So unlike the Persian or the Arabic, where we push in, you can push in because you have this pen that's like a bamboo stick. The softer quills or a reed pen, or a goose pen, or a calligraphy nib can't push back in. But what it can do, what it wants to do, is stroke. And what we do know, with a totally different topic, there's much of what we know about Qumran and the Essenes has been proven to be various assumptions and sometimes misdirection. What we do know about these people is they thought of writing as a form of song. And so anything that could be written in Hebrew, they would write. As almost like later on the Benedictines, lettering itself was a form of devotion. So if you're writing the word emet, which means truth, you're writing the first letter of the alphabet, aleph, the middle letter of the alphabet, mem, and the last letter of the alphabet, tav. In a sense, you're doing the entire alphabet. which is
I wonder, Arash, if you could, taking into account that these are letter by letter by letter, not connected, add something comparable to show how they are connected in Arabic and in Persian.
Do it for a sheet.
Okay, yeah.
I do want to ask one question
Oh, yeah.
that circle gets too covered. Is there any relationship between the letters and the Arabic numerals where the angles in the Arabic numbers represent the actual angles in the number itself? I never saw the circle with the measurement with dots. Is there any relationship mathematically to the way that the proportions for the different
That's an
letters
interesting question. Yeah, I've never looked deep into it. I don't know, to be honest. It would be an interesting topic to look into. Carol, do you have any thoughts there?
What was the question?
Well,
Similar to the Arabic numbers, where the way the numbers are written have the angle for the number into the number itself. So like number 7 has 7 angles in it. I was curious if the Arabic number or Arabic letter system also has some kind of proportion to it in the way that it's drawn. If it's based on a circle with a diameter and a certain number of lines seems to imply some kind of math, or not.
Zainab, do you have a comment on that?
There is some, a specific algorithm for putting dots and.
Can you speak up?
Yeah, there is a specific, algorithm for or chart for doing the calligraphy based off the dots, and some of those numbers in Arabic actually following that as well. But for this specific question, I'm not sure.
And I have to admit, I never heard that the Arabic numbers have the angle or the divisions of the circle in it.
Not for the division of the circle, but for the actual number, like for the number 4.
Yeah, but that, oh, okay.
No, actually there is not. Only 2 or 3 number in Arabic has a actually kind of rule, same as that. For 3, we have a 3 dandune, we call it dandune, or
Yeah.
for the 2, we have a 2.
There'll be 2 angles.
Yeah, but nothing more.
No, it should be from like the 7 angles.
No, we have not.
4 only has 2.
The 7 in Arabic is the same as a V, so we have not a 7 angle.
No, I meant it's been in the Romanization of it. They plan to put angles into it, so they'll take the Arabic 7, draw a line through it, and put the square like this.
No, there is not.
Don't know of it.
Something
Interesting
like
follow-up.
that.
Yeah.
So let's go back to the issue of tools. And Arash, you focused on the traditional tools of the reed pen and then morphing to bamboo, which is also, of course, a grass with nodes like the reed. But you also have a brush there. So could you talk about that? And then I want to move into the question of how traditional writing relates to our modern world, how you incorporate traditional tools and methods into modern work.
Yeah, that's a very interesting question. So this one that has the brush is a different story. So I don't actually write with this part. This was a Chinese or Japanese calligraphy brush. So when I came here, I couldn't find anywhere the reed pen. Nobody sells those. But then these are bamboo, so this is my multicultural kind of effort. So I would buy these and cut them from the other side, so I can carve my own tool out of it. And then later, when I had workshops, I would bring these, and kids would start writing with this, but then get interested and start doing the brush work, which is much easier than working with reed. So. To be honest, I don't use the brush.
How do you put this red silk in a coffee street?
Which one?
The red silk.
Oh, for this one? Well, I use brush for that one actually. Yeah. So not this one, but kind of a more fine brush. Yeah, so, but with the modern, it's a hard transition, to be honest, because, you know, in a more traditional society, like for example in Iran, where you are taught calligraphy and, you know, the masters really look at you as someone who is going to continue that tradition, they expect you to continue writing in a traditional form. Which is, you know, following very specific rule in terms of how you write each letter, and then each word, and then a sentence, a composition. All of those have very specific rule, and you're being judged by being able to execute it like exactly such and such master. And then, you know, after that, you're able to move a very tiny step beyond that. You can't really completely, you know, kind of change or transform a style. That's how the styles are being perfected, you know, kind of across the time, but they don't change. So if you look at, for example, the Solus script, which I wrote the Aleph, the first letter, it started about 8th, 9th century, but it still remains the same as of today. Masters, when they become master, they want to write that perfect, you know, kind of Aleph as it is. And then when you become, you know, super master in a sense, you tweak it a little bit. Maybe you curve, you know, kind of this much more than before, but you're not allowed to change it a lot. And that's completely different than art form as you know it as a modern form. You know, the more creative you become, or the more you change and transform things, the more accepted you are in the world of art. So, so interestingly enough, for myself, my own practice, I'm one of those hybrids that I enjoy really both of them. So the ones that I do in a more traditional form, like this one, I either keep them to myself or, you know, take them to more traditional spaces, but I never put them on my social media, or because if art galleries see this, they don't even accept, you know, the more modern work. So it's a kind of, I don't know if you have encountered that or not, but it's a very different dynamic between, you know, kind of modernity and traditionality. Do you want to add to that?
No, I'm just absorbing it. Right, because in the Hebrew tradition of Sfirut, of sort of being a scribe, replication is the ideal.
It's the way that I think of it is it's performative rather than creative.
Well, there is a whole tradition called Masorah of very inventive little Hebrew letters inside Torah scrolls that are really wild and wacky. And most of the time it's brought to me as the scribe made a mistake because it's been lost. And I'll say, no, that's from Czechoslovakia. And that lamed is saying, you have to read the word, and it's hallel, is praise, and it's singing. So that's not, and they say, oh no, that can't be correct. Scribes don't do anything artistic. I said, this one did. And so there are moments where within the tradition, there are little corners of expression. But what you also said about that, you don't want to put it on social media. Because when people see artistic, creative, or non-traditional Hebrew lettering, it's then called either decorative or just, I can't deal with it. So it is interesting when because you're kind of playing with, someone's looking at a prayer book and all of a sudden you're messing with it. It takes more, because we haven't seen that. We haven't seen creative work. So did anyone here grow up doing well, no one's here, so if you're from Russia, you learned really beautiful handwriting in the first, second, third, very early on. Beautiful handwriting, Cyrillic handwriting. But we've given up handwriting in the United States. I think we've given up teaching even calligraphy. I don't think it's ever taught anywhere.
It's at the City College in SF. They've got Chinese calligraphy.
Yeah, so I think there's a kind of good fight going on of taking traditional materials, messing with them, and then seeing what happens. See if that messiness can be contagious.
I have a tangential association that leads back to the Hebrew. I have 3 grandchildren in Berkeley High, and I made the mistake of writing a greeting on a card, and my grandson, who was 17, said, "I'm sorry, I can't read it," because they don't teach handwriting in the Berkeley schools anymore. And he absolutely cannot read English cursive.
What?
So what happens is that each kid invents their own cursive, because if you're busy lettering in caps, you begin to correct them. And I said to him, well, you know, there is a cursive that evolves that does this. And so I wanted to ask you about Hebrew, because in contrast to Arabic, Hebrew cursive is quite different from the formal Hebrew. Many of the letters are done in ways that aren't recognizable. And where did that come from?
It's somewhat different, but now I'm going to hesitate here a little bit because I think you're a neuropsychologist.
No, a psycholinguist.
What?
A psycholinguist.
Psycholinguist. Sorry, I got that so wrong. But psycholinguist.
They're related, of course.
I'm
but
sure.
They're not transparently.
No. But anyways, I have dysgraphia. I have dysgraphia. It was a blessing I gave to my son. When he was tested.
In your work, I have dysgraphia. Wow.
When he was tested, they said, well, your son has dysgraphia, he can't do handwriting. And I said, well, neither can I. And then the whole room got quiet. My entire family turned towards me, like I just admitted something interesting. And then my whole family said, then how do you do lettering? And the expert said, because lettering is drawing.
Right.
It's a different part of the brain.
Oh.
But you have trouble reading. You have trouble reading.
I have to work really hard to read when the languages are going left to right and right to left. It's a field day. But lettering is drawing. And when we don't share lettering, that means we're also not sharing drawing. That's kind of why we discussed on the phone. I don't like you. Yes, it's Hebrew calligraphy, but as soon as we say the word calligraphy, people like freeze up and drop. They faint right away. But lettering is different.
But why did Hebrew develop cursive, whereas Arabic essentially has only a cursive?
So cursive comes really, really late. Comes actually, actually post-medieval is cursive, and it's really an outgrowth of another alphabet called Rashi script.
Yes.
And Rashi script was developed because we have all these commentaries, and the commentaries have to, it's like italic. The commentaries have to be written in Hebrew letters, but they can't get mixed up with the source code. So Rashi script was developed, and out of Rashi script comes cursive, as Europeans are writing letters using pens that go, again, the tools change, fountain pens, and they work much better that way.
But why didn't Arabic start with separate letters the way most languages have?
Yeah, I don't know much about the history.
I don't know the answer to that, except to refer back to what Peretz was saying regarding writing originally being carved. And the earliest Arabic that we have that I can think of is inscriptions. So, well, we do have some early writings on ostraca, on potsherds, and we do have some early writing on large camel bones like pelvis and shoulders. But for the most part, it's carved, it's milestone markers, and it's gravestones, but it's a carved script, and it's called, the style in English, we call it a lapidary script. So it's not a specific answer, but Arabic, the formality of Arabic in terms of connected letters and standalone letters and initial, medial, final letters has remained fairly consistent. What has changed, and maybe this is what we can turn to, is in languages where consonants are so significant. Tell us about vowels and how they appear and are written.
I'm also wondering, Mark had his hand up, and did you have a question? I know that you're reading.
Thank you.
Yeah. I forget your name. Arash?
Arash, yes.
Oh, good. I wrote that down. Sorry. So you were mentioning that there's not much creativity that's allowed, and I've heard that in Chinese calligraphy and stuff like that. But I'm familiar with in Arabic calligraphy. There's these amazing places where the calligraphy, the letters form shapes, horses and lions and faces like that. And there has to be some stretching and modification of the letters in order to fit that.
Yeah.
And so, how is that allowed? Or is that an accepted form of creativity? And how does that reconcile within the tradition?
Yeah, I guess maybe I rephrase it. It's, you know, the definition of creativity is different than, you know, kind of in the modern world, right? So in the modern world, creativity is about, you know, kind of throwing out everything that is and, you know, completely making something completely new. But and maybe in traditional, you know, kind of practice, creativity, kind of starts from the collective knowledge rather than my individual, you know, kind of understanding or expressing my individuality. So it's a very different way. Even, you know, kind of when you look at like traditional art forms, none of them are having signature. Very, very rarely, until they met, you know, kind of the Western world, they started signing their work. So artists wouldn't, you know, consider themselves as, you know, kind of, I'm the creative person, I'm the one who is creating this. It was more about, I'm purifying myself and connecting myself to the source, and then transferring something beautiful. So creativity meant, you know, I can connect to the creator and then, you know, kind of write or, you know, kind of bring in something to this world. So I guess it was a different, or it is, right? So if you believe in that completely and immerse yourself. But to your point about the shapes, putting calligraphy or sentences or words into shapes, that has its own system too. So, you know, for example, when you start putting your composition into a circle, or like, for example, a drop shape, there's a certain way you should go about it. You will start from bottom to top. You never put any sacred names on the bottom. You always put it on top. So it's not like a sentence that you read from right to left and it's done. You might need to decode, because words are going to be juxtaposed in that composition to be able to form in that shape. And I've seen masters sometimes spend days and days and sometimes months to perfect one composition in, for example, a circle or a shape. But they don't morph the words or the letters in favor of the shape. So, for example, if you have a circle, you're not allowed to put an aleph that is circle. You do the aleph that is straight, but then put it somewhere that, you know, gradually with other things become that circle. And then actually consonants play a very important role in that shape making or in general in the composition. So in handwriting or in books, you never see the lower vowels. So it's usually you memorize them and understand them. The longer one we do write, but the shorter one we don't. But then in calligraphy, it is a very, very important tool for a calligrapher to complete their composition. So they write the sentence or whatever they need to do, and then they start putting the dots. And we don't even write the dots at the beginning. Dots, you know, vowels, even symbolic symbols are added later, and that brings everything together in maybe a rectangle or square or circle. So
we have just about 15 minutes remaining, and we had talked at the beginning of doing a collaborative work in Hebrew and Arabic. So can I encourage you to move in that direction and maybe take these ideas of consonants and vowels and vocalization into that, so it would be to a certain extent talking while you're doing it?
Yeah, totally. And
questions while
do answers. Questions.
All right, so I think someone asked about vowels. I think I tried to explain a little bit that vowels came later, and then even later came these little cantorial marks called trope. so people who sing certain texts can actually learn the notes, which means I was an educator for many years, children trying to learn how to read the consonant, read the vowel at the same time, and then read the musical note, that could be a challenge.
I have a question. When is the crown? What letters have the crown?
So that's in a Torah scroll. And they're called tagim. And okay, so one thing that is in common is that certain manuscripts need to function. Like a Torah scroll doesn't have illumination because it has to be perfect and precise. However, creativity, since it's supposed to be the Word of God and God is a king, I'm just using that language, certain letters got little crowns on top of them, little 3-point crowns. And that's in a Torah scroll and mezuzah and things like that. So that's how that comes to be.
Okay, you're going to write in this circle. If you want to get closer and see it from different angles, you're more than welcome to. So,
but when you're doing this kind of work, you rarely put the vowels in.
Mm-hmm. So we just
actually I have no idea what we're doing. Okay, so I'm going to start here and go that way.
Okay, I will write in the inner circle.
You can do the inner circle,
yeah.
But on this side, which side of the line?
Oh, the side. So I can do inside.
I can do the outer. Can I do the outer circle?
Yeah.
Okay.
Can we ask questions like this?
Oh yeah, definitely. So
is the ink composition very different when using calligraphy?
That's a good one.
What kind of ink are you using?
I'm using actually a Japanese calligraphy ink. That's one of the inks that I can find here, but it's too black because usually for Arabic and Persian calligraphy we use an ink that is a little bit opaque. So when you put words or letters on top of each other, you can see through them. But this one is too black, so I sometimes add water, which doesn't work really well, but that's what it is.
That is probably the origin of the vowel signs. I made a drip. As we learned in engineering, if you can't fix it, feature it. Look, a vowel!
Well, it gets a feature.
Hopefully they'll change what you're writing to something true.
The inks.
No,
That's like a
unintentional
weird-
vowel.
So what was the second word you're writing? Or you're writing the first one?
Oh. Okay.
What's the next?
Well, rechem or rachamim.
What does that mean?
Compassion.
Oh, okay.
In Arabic.
All right. Yeah.
Looking for, common words held in common.
Perfect.
So can anybody recognize what Arash has written? Salam. And what Peretz has written?
Shalom.
Shalom. So those are two cognate words. Hello, peace. Cognate. Shalom, salam. Arabic and Hebrew. Oh, it's the same word.
This cognate rechem, its origin is the word womb. It means womb, the most compassionate place we were ever in our lives. Unconditional love is the womb.
That's the same in Arabic.
It's so these moves of being book-based people, then if you're a book-based people, you have to have alphabets, books, teachers, institutions. It urbanizes us, it forms us, it changes us when you're a book-based people.
Dan, can you give us a good definition of cognate?
Two words with the same origin. Like German book and English book.
And salam shalom was the first example, but now the second word they've done are also cognates. Rahmat and Rahman. Rahim. But you see, the Rahman and Rahim are both with 3 consonants. So still cognate with the Rahman.
What's your next word?
I don't know. Where
Do
do
we
you?
have time for one more?
Oh yeah. Where you want to go?
Great.
Yeah, no, we have to go around.
Yeah, we have to finish the circle.
Yeah.
That's our commitment. You said there's a, what is your second word, the second letter coming from? The bait?
Hmm?
So bait means home in Arabic too. So
Oh, bite.
Bait.
Bait.
Yeah.
Right.
Bait.
Big good top.
Well, and there's another cognate. We've talked about ketubot and
Oh,
ketabat.
Yeah.
Ketabat.
Okay, that can be the next one.
Yeah, you should go through the word writing. What's the is of writing?
Well, katib,
Yeah.
katav, to write. Actually, the most interesting one is Quran. Kriya means to read out loud. Bal Kriya is a Bal Kriya is someone who reads a text aloud.
So the next one was Kataba?
Okay, cognate in Arabic. Yeah.
I'm wondering, darasa,
Oh yeah.
from where Madrasa-Midrasha comes, is also another cognate, like it's a lesson.
Which is
Midrasha.
Darasa.
darasa, to study. Madrasa.
Yeah, that's the word.
So Mark, to your point about the creativity, I want to go back to what Carol was saying about performativity, because I've written a little bit about this in the context of art through miniature painting, and what it means to surrender to a certain kind of art form. And within that surrender, spiritual surrender, is a kind of continuity where you don't see yourself as just an individual, but part of a larger history, which is what Arash was mentioning. And it's a huge distinction of how we think about art in the sort of Western world, individual artist versus a spiritual commitment that people have.
Sounds more like
Manuscripts are never signed.
Exactly.
Rarely.
So it's almost just a spiritual commitment, but the act of, in some cases, people will say it's a form of worship itself, right?
So it sounds a lot like Buddha, the art of Japanese chivalry, martial arts. There's lots of cognates of that in other cultures around the world too, where it's more
What was the next one? Madrasa?
becoming more of a
Madrasa.
channel
Madrasa.
rather than
Midrash.
Midrash or
Agent.
madrasa. Mark,
Yes.
word 5 in Hebrew. 5.
The number
Vav.
5. It's a
So all in traditional Hebrew, all the numbers are letters.
yeah. How do you pronounce that?
Vav?
5. Yeah.
yes.
Oh, Chumash. Oh, Chumash.
Chumash.
Sorry,
We
I
spell it Khamsa in Arabic.
Hamsa.
Yeah.
Right, as in a Hamsa.
Yeah.
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 What's sun?
Shams.
Shams.
Oh, well, Shamash is,
Yeah. These ones? Yeah, these are completely for decoration. Yeah. There's
So it'd be a very complicated letter.
Yeah, no, it is not. Yeah, these are like this. These are vowels, but these are just decorative.
And also the vocalization or voweling you'll always find, for example, in the Quran, always vocalized. Someone was mentioning voweling and vocalization.
But not the very earliest manuscripts.
Yeah. If you look at the earliest manuscripts, it comes later.
And we also didn't arrive at the contrast between the scroll and the codex.
is that Midrasha?
Yeah.
Okay, so the suggestion was
Beautiful cup.
Shemesh.
Yeah. That's part of the things you can change actually.
All right.
What was the next one?
Shemesh, sun.
Yes.
Oh, that's a nice one.
So Zainab is a GTU PhD student, and she's also a calligrapher.
Zainab, why don't you join them?
Yeah, that would be
If the
great.
masters.
I tried.
Join them.
It would take a long time. So
They're the stroke, direction of stroke is so important. That's what the dictionary says.
You're asking about handwriting? So,
like the way that they clarify characters to each other, just and it's just the order of it. You don't need to see the picture. It's really cool. So, like when you say my name, draw it on. I never really, I did.
So as we're enjoying these last few moments of demonstration and conversation, maybe we can take this moment to give a round of applause to our people. Our moderator, Carol Bier. And of course, thank you to the Walter and Elise House Fund that supports us with these programming. So thank you everyone for our participation. That's a good question. Where will we put this? Shall we? It's beautiful. Should we have it somewhere? Yeah.
If you want.
So there's a.
What's the meaning of your changing to the red color?
oh,
Just artistic whimsy.
we can do something very heretical. We can put our names.
Again, please take